all, and welcome to another, what will hopefully be another exciting afternoon here at Live at the Waterhole. My name is Liam Burrow. I'm the very fortunate naturalist that gets to chat you through a couple of these waterside scenes over the next 2 hours or so. And yeah, what a pleasure it is to be starting here at Okakoyo today. Anyway, before we get too carried away, I'd like to just remind you that we do like to keep these shows as interactive as possible. So, yeah, I am standing by for your questions, comments, and thoughts throughout the show. And yeah, keep them coming. Anyway, a very sunny looking afternoon here at Okakoyo in Namibia. Quite a bit of traffic, some springbok and some gemsbok moving through in the last sort of 20-30 minutes or so. And we've been seeing quite a bit of wildlife movement on a number of our other feeds. So it is looking like it's going to be a busy afternoon. Alrighty, speaking of busy, let's head over now to Narrated in Olifants West to see what's happening. And a busy afternoon indeed. Elephants all over the show, but especially true here at Narrated Dam on Olifants West Game Reserve. Just a few kilometers outside the town of Hoedspruit and in the greater Kruger. A really magnificent spot. So this little group of elephants is all kind of congregating around an artificial well, a man-made well, which is where all of the fresh water is being pumped up quite a distance underneath the Earth's surface. And then it kind of spills over into this fairly dirty looking pond where this younger individual is having a splash. Now, as we know, ellies are quite particular when it comes to selecting a source of water to drink. And like us, given any opportunity, they do want the freshest, cleanest stuff. So they tend to do their drinking from the well, their wallowing and splashing in the muddy stuff on the left. And while there is a little bit of drizzle forecast for the area, for kind of parts of the Lowveld, it is a sweltering hot day. So a very effective way for these ellies to thermoregulate. They have no ability to produce sweat on their very thick and very dark skin. So any opportunity to splash it with a bit of water or a bit of mud, you have the effect of evaporation off of the skin, and that drastically increases their ability to cool down. Lots of pushing and shoving. We did also hear whispers of the potential for sighting of some African wild dogs in Olifants West this afternoon. So we will be on the lookout in the background on these various feeds. Hopefully they will get thirsty and pop up again. Leo, definitely a very good start to a very good Friday. And yeah, to anybody out there who does subscribe, a very happy Easter weekend to you. You can see lots of ear flapping going on there as well. That doesn't necessarily indicate aggression or frustration. It can do under certain circumstances, but in this case it's simply to cool down. Occasionally we get a bit of a glimpse at the network of blood vessels in the rear side of that ear. So the effect of driving that ear backwards, pressing that ear against the skin, helps to radiate heat quite effectively. Very wrinkly skin is also pretty amazing. When water or mud is actually splashed on it, the fact that it is so sort of wrinkled and filled with crevices means that it is up to 60% more effective in retaining water for longer, a longer skin. And the grooves, to some degree, all kind of interconnect. So a bit of water splashed at the top just sort of travels all over the shape. Another winning natural design. Martin, if they were really motivated, I suppose they probably could. I've actually seen this particular well up close. It's pretty well constructed. Solid concrete with kind of a thick mesh of rocks. You'll find a well malfunctioned. If the elephants arrived and there was no water being produced out of it, they may very well take out frustrations on it. That's something pretty typical of ellies. Even in the case of kind of waterholes, solar pump with solar panels, as is often the case in these very remote corners in these wild spaces. And if elephants do arrive and something is not working properly, they do get quite cranky, and they will just solar panels, pull pumps up out of the ground. They are, after all, extremely intelligent and very quick to find weak spots. So, yeah, best is keep the water coming. Now, these African savanna elephants, which are the only species that occurs in the greater Kruger, are daily drinkers. They have to drink every single day. If at all possible, probably twice. That's not the same for all elephants. The desert-adapted ellies that we see at Okakoyo could quite easily go a number of days without water. But that is an adaptation specific to their subspecies. Water is very much life for elephants, and they're willing to walk huge distances every day to access it. Possibly about 25 kilometers in this environment anyway. Total peace. I've always found the effect of spending time with elephants to be somewhat therapeutic, very relaxing. Something about the rhythm of that tail and those flapping ears. Once you get over how big and intimidating they are, there's something powerful about them, and quite calming. It has been said that time spent with elephants has a similar effect as gazing up at mountain peaks, great fires, and the sea. It certainly has that effect for me. There's a sense of something we can't control, something out of our reach, which is pretty powerful. Long may they live. That pump is certainly going to be working overtime today. This well is shallow. It's only about 3 or 4 foot deep. And then it's kind of filled, and again the overflow goes into this little pan. So it looks like the ellies have pretty much flattened the water that's in there, which is fairly understandable, with each adult elephant probably somewhere between 50 and 100 litres, quite possibly. None of these are particularly enormous elephants. Most of them are quite young, but still, that is a lot of water. A couple of raised trunks there having a bit of a sniff, and that's why. Quite a big guy coming in. And that periscope sniff in some cases, an indication of a jet. Alrighty, well, as these ellies carry on with their business, I think time to check in at another one of the live at the Waterhole and a tower in Middelquart. Alrighty, well, way up in South Africa's northwest now, right up on the boundary with Botswana, we have a magnificent herd of elephants gradually making their way down to the water at Tau. And they're not alone. Looks like wildebeest in the back there, quite a large warthog. Again, water is life. We are fast approaching the hottest period during the day. That occurs somewhere between about 1 and 2 p.m. It's a little after 1 at the moment. So with any luck, we're going to have a steady stream of wildlife to many of these water points. These elephants doing a bit of dusting in that very, very loose, dry earth there. They do appear to have visited the water a little bit further back, leaving their skin quite moist. And now an application of that dust sticks quite nicely, a little bit like talcum powder after a shower. It has a very nice effect of not only conditioning that skin, but also chasing away biting flies. And not something you would think would be a problem for something like an elephant with such thick skin. But again, keeping in mind the skin may be an inch thick on parts of their backs and their heads. there are also parts behind the ears, between the front legs, around the eye, that are paper thin. They're very, very easy to get stings and bites. One of the senior females there leading the charge. I doubt she's the matriarch. I think that is the largest individual furthest at the back there. The role as matriarch or as lead female of these groups is a birthright. And it's not a position that's necessarily fought for or argued over. It's entirely down to seniority. Most experienced cow holds the role. And that makes enough sense, I guess. You want the one with the most knowledge, and of course Ellies are famous for having probably some of the best memories on the planet. And you want that one with the most experience to be making all the decisions. And it's the quality of those decisions based on decades of experience surviving in very tough conditions at times, that will hopefully keep this entire family healthy, happy. Clay, thank you very much for your question. I think to some degree they probably do. So for anybody who doesn't know, what Clay is asking about is a male elephant structure, or rather social structure, which is entirely separate to that of the females, quite interestingly. So a breeding herd, such as the herd that we're looking at the moment, has no male family members, or no permanent males anyway. Obviously, male calves are born and they are allowed to stay with the family to a point, but they probably get to somewhere between 13 and about 15 years of age, and they hit puberty. They start to become possibly a little bit more aggressive, but I think the bigger issue is kind of reproductively interested in female family members, and it is at that point that elephant cows will start to push them away. A very good internal mechanism for preventing inbreeding. But now a young male elephant, which is essentially only 13 or 14 years of age, is in essence the equivalent of a human teenager. It's a very vulnerable stage. So a male elephant is in need of support. So the young males gravitate towards one another and often gravitate towards one very large ex-male who's kind of been and seen and done it all before, and that male acts as a bit of a mentor. And to some degree, to answer the question, that large adult to monitor and to regulate the early musth cycles of those younger males, which can be probably a pretty intense experience for them. What it means to go through musth is an increase in the production of testosterone by up to 60 times the normal healthy levels. Musth is a Hindi word meaning drunk, and quite literally the males become kind of intoxicated on their own hormones. Very, very complicated, aggressive, very, very dehydrated, grumpy, and by all means, they should be avoided. Thankfully, musth doesn't last forever. Probably a couple of weeks to a month or two for a young male, and then it passes. And it is all designed as they mature to encourage them to pursue females. Yeah, I often refer on these live segments to this sort of elephant society as a culture, and I think that that describes it kind of appropriately. It is a shared system of knowledge, and there's a definite sense of care for one another and care for community. They are phenomenal animals. Without a doubt, my absolute favorite. I live for the Ellies. Thankfully, after decades of decline across much of their range, there are small pockets of elephant populations in Africa that are now showing some pretty positives. Still, the population has declined from around 10 million elephants 100 or so years ago to something like 300,000 now. 350,000 is a pretty good, pretty sustainable population, but it does need to be conserved. Still a lot of areas in which elephants are very, very vulnerable in the wild in Africa. I do see a bit of movement of a crocodile in the water there in the bottom right corner. They're looking a little more active today. They were very sluggish yesterday. Maybe we'll see a bit of fishing. Alrighty, now for something completely different, head to southern Kenya, to Old Donyo, to have a look at what's happening there. Beautiful. So a couple of Maasai giraffes and a troop of what I believe are olive baboons. Lovely. We don't get to spend a whole lot of time primates around live at the Waterhole. I think these baboons and vervet monkeys realize that they're quite vulnerable out in the open, so our views tend to be relatively limited. Nice to get a good look today. So we don't see things like on any of our feeds. Those primates are generally restricted to equatorial forests, but in our savannas we do see baboons, of which there are a couple of varieties, and vervet monkeys. There are also a number of galagos, a number of bush babies that are active at night, but very rarely seen. You will usually only be fortunate enough to catch a view of a galago or a bush baby with a spotlight on a drive in the evening. So yeah, these olive baboons would be the biggest primate we'd be seeing at Aldonyo here in Kenya. They're pretty formidable things. The males can probably get up to about 45 kilos, so maybe 100 pounds, something like that. And they have 4 centimeter long canine teeth with which they will fight one another for dominance. These bands of baboons are controlled by a fairly militant gang of dominant males, one of which will hold pole position. It's kind of the baboon king. But there's constant infighting. They often have lips ripped open, teeth closed, ears off. Yeah, it's a pretty brutal society. Lovely to see these giraffes doing that incredible squatting, forward drinking lean that they do. Still a couple of baboons around. Terry, so these olive baboons do roam through the savannas. But essentially, if a predator or something was to arrive, their main line of survival is to bolt for a bit of a tree, and something that's going to give them a bit of height, and that's where their security lies. So out in completely open landscapes, they are somewhat vulnerable to attacks by things like lions in particular. They're no pushover, though, against a slightly smaller predator, something like cheetah, perhaps a leopard. A gang of baboons can be pretty vicious. I know of countless stories of people losing large domestic dogs, the likes of German shepherds and that sort of thing, to troops of baboons. Yeah, they can be very confrontational and quite bold when they're in a large group. But they do like to graze on kind of fresh shoots. So you do see them moving across the open savannas in search of fresh grass. Things like beetles, little tortoises. And much like us, in general, they are pretty omnivorous, very opportunistic, and their diet is highly variable through the seasons. And they also quite frighteningly share something like 94-95% of our DNA. So while they are a lesser primate, not quite in the same category as baboons, or rather as chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, orangutans, and they are relatively closely related to us. Still, it's that final 5% that makes all the difference. A fairly pregnant looking giraffe cow there. You can see a lovely rounded belly. Oh, and a big elephant. Now there is quite a large grumpy musth bull elephant in this area that quite recently actually killed a giraffe, unfortunately. And there was a clip of that confrontation circling. Yeah, it's the first time I've seen something like that. And the giraffe was having a drink on the opposite side of the waterhole, and this elephant bull pitched up and he just charged right into the side of this giraffe and impaled it with one of his tusks, and it collapsed just off camera a few minutes later and died. Pretty bizarre. But again, a little earlier we were chatting about how these male elephants during that musth period are just out of their minds hormonally, not behaving normally at all. Yeah, pity confrontation had to end that way. Pretty senseless. Now this really is a seasoned elephant bull. You can see, even though he perhaps doesn't have the most enormous tusks, you see those sunken temples and those very raggedy ears. That tells the story of a long life in this landscape. It would be a guess, but I would say this bull is probably somewhere around 40 years of age. Essentially only really just coming into his prime as a breeding individual. And you can kind of see that wet stream from between the elephant's eyes and his ear. That is indicates musth. So that temporal gland is of link elephant's system of hormones with very elevated testosterone. It will become swollen, inflamed, and it will leak. It will also drop constantly, which is the case at the moment. You can see those very wet back legs. So absolutely this guy is in musth. And if you and I were sat close to this waterhole, we'd be able to smell a very musty scent. It's like a goat to some degree. Sort of a musty, wet pea smell, and that is quite literally the testosterone spreading through the air. Might not be such a nice smell to you or me, but to feel good is an application of a good Hugo Boss cologne. It sends the message, I'm available. Yeah, this could very well be the bull that killed that giraffe. No doubt about it, this guy is in charge, not sharing his waterhole privileges with anyone. Ella, thanks very much for your question there, and most certainly it does. Soil erosion can be a particularly huge problem in many of these wild places. The big issue is that when kind of that vegetation layer at the surface there is disturbed or destroyed, and you have the effect of water running over the surface, or even elements like the wind, and that very valuable layer of topsoil is pretty rapidly lost. It can get washed away, it can get blown away. But then in the absence of grass with roots, to actually hold that soil in place, it just accelerates. It gets worse and worse. You lose tons of that topsoil, and then no real plants grow at all. So, yeah, it can be a very big problem in a lot of these areas. Many of the game reserves in southern Africa, some of the sort of most renowned game reserves in the area, come from a history of cattle farming. So they were privately owned. Thousands of head of cattle were run on those properties for many, many years historically. And as is often the case in agricultural areas, run quite unethically. And we see the scars even today. It can take centuries for that damage to kind of be undone. So many of the more sustainably run reserves actually have sort of habitat management teams that will go out with the sole responsibility of fixing those sort of problems. Putting plans in place to, if not completely undo damage to the soil, at least to stop it. Yeah, we have to find more sustainable ways to utilize our environments. It might not be a problem in our lifetime, but chances are the next generation will pay a price for poor decisions in this one. I very briefly mentioned this elephant kind of dribbling urine, as is very characteristic of these males when they are right in the peak of a musth cycle. And so he will basically have a fairly constant of urine dribbling out there between his hind legs, day and night. So hence this guy is probably quite grumpy, very dehydrated. All the more reason to stop here at the Old Donyo Lodge Waterhole today. Even on a normal day, a bull this size is probably drinking somewhere in the vicinity of 200 litres, but losing probably more than 20 litres just through that dribbling urine every day. And he's got to take on some more. What a quintessentially African scene, though, those flat-topped umbrella thorn acacia trees. Beautiful flat-bottomed cumulus clouds in the sky, and a towering elephant bull. Doesn't get much better than that. Something about these East African scenes in particular, it's just the scale of them. Everything is more vast, more open, bigger land, bigger animals. One of the last frontiers for sure. Quite a big rip in his right ear there. It's quite possible that that was caused by the tusk of another elephant bull in a fight, a physical confrontation for dominance. It's well healed though. It'll never completely seal up, however. The kind of raggedy edges of those elephant ears are a great tool to identify particular individuals. And elephant monitoring teams operating in Kenya and in Southern Africa use that exact thing to keep track of them. Alrighty, apologies, we seem to have lost Old Donyo for a moment there. But back at Narrated Dam here on Olifants West in South Africa. Some more ellies. One of the very cool things about these kind of animal webcams is the fact that they are so unimposing. We get kind of a fly on the wall type view into animal behavior between the hours that game drives would usually be conducted. And while the animals are not too put off by our presence on those safari vehicles, if they're conducted ethically and in the right way. And this is an extra special view. This is animal behavior as it should be, completely undisturbed. Still no sign of our wild dogs, unfortunately. I have a feeling with things hotting up now, 1:45 in the afternoon, and they have found some shade out there somewhere. Probably not too far from one of these water holes, be it Cat Eye and the Lady Dam or Rosie's, which are all kind of in the vicinity. But yeah, I don't think they're going to be too active with it, as warm as it is now. However, if you are in those cam feeds a little bit later in the day, it's around 4 or 5 p.m. very well, get some dogs. They're very special, those wild dogs. There's thought to be fewer than 500 in the entire Greater Kruger, so any sighting of them at all is a privilege. Jono, good afternoon. Thanks for your question there. So, across much of this environment, the most common prey item for those African wild dogs would be the impala. We quite regularly see them taking smaller stuff as well, duiker, steenbok, warthogs, occasionally nyala on the slightly bigger scale. But in other parts of Africa, in parts of Zambia, I've seen footage of them taking adult wildebeest bulls if the pack is big enough, and certainly even things like oryx in parts of the Kalahari. Tswalu's wild dog pack is famous for tackling adult oryx. A formidable adversary considering the size of those wild dogs, but they are just so relentless in a large enough pack, and they have the stamina, the endurance, and the tenacity to kind of outperform those big antelope. I also have seen footage from a drought that occurred in South Africa's Lowveld in 2016 and 2017 of a wild dog pack kind of picking on a downed female buffalo, an adult female buffalo, but without a doubt she was in a very weakened state. You wouldn't typically expect wild dogs to try their luck on a buffalo. They're just too tough. It's pretty amazing. Certainly no shortage of pachyderms of elephants in this Olifants West area, and the habitat is pretty perfect for them. Oh, a little bit of pushing and shoving there. There's quite a few ellies out of view here. A couple of very big individuals. Chatting to friends and colleagues that work in this Olifants West area, I believe that Ezelwini bull, the tremendous tusker, is around. A very tiny calf there. So fingers crossed for a view of the big guy at some stage. Also interesting that very largest individual has lost of her tail, or rather his tail, that is a young bull. They lose tails for various reasons, but I think probably most realistically is that it was kind of chopped off by a hyena when he was much smaller. It's a fairly common thing. Big risk to take for a hyena though, sneaking up on an elephant in the dark, biting off that tail, even if it is just a little calf. The calf is going to scream, and it will have the full force of all of the adult females in that herd standing to attention in seconds. And ultimately that is why the survival rates of elephant calves are so high, because their mums are so good. This is a tiny youngster though, perhaps a couple of weeks old, a real newborn. Protected behind a fortress of solid legs. Now, an elephant calf is born after the longest gestation period of animal to walk on land. a staggering 22 months. And it very much arrives in one of the most protective family units that we know of. The cows will do pretty much anything to keep those calves protected from predators, fed, watered, and they are phenomenal parents. The bond between them is irrefutable. I hope that everybody out there, and I know many of you viewers are very passionate kind of connoisseurs of nature. I hope that all of you, at least once in your life, if you haven't had it already, have the opportunity to come out to, to Africa in person, and to come and see things like elephants in particular, eye to eye, up close and personal. And they really are some of the most incredible things. And I believe if more people had the opportunity to see things like elephants in person and to appreciate their importance in this landscape, their importance culturally to our local people, and their importance to us as safari professionals, I think then people would be far less motivated to come out into these environments and try and shoot them for those tusks. Long live the elephant. I certainly hope we have them around when I have kids. Lenny, thanks very much for your question. Artwork kind of experienced by things like antelope when they are very, very stressed. So I suppose it could be possible in a wild dog. They are obviously two fairly different categories of animal. For anybody who doesn't know, white muscle disease is something experienced under very, very high stress conditions by our antelope species. We see it in antelope are kind of being captured, perhaps to move them to another reserve for kind of restocking for genetic purposes. If those antelope are subject to very, very elevated stress levels and heat and that sort of thing, and they can die, and then the muscles are sort of overstressed, even to the point where carcasses and the meat can't consume. It's totally tainted. Must be pretty awful. But yeah, thankfully, most of the modern game capture experts, people involved in moving animals, and vets that work with them, trained to avoid things like that. Another little elephant toddler coming through there, maybe a 3 or 4 year old. Wonderful to see quite a variety there. This large male in the waterhole with a very short tail definitely doesn't belong to this herd. He's too big, well past kind of the onset of puberty, but there's a very good chance he was born into this herd. The cows seem quite relaxed with him around, so there's a very good chance that they know one another. And it's well documented in African Elephant Society that even long after a bull has kind of been forcibly encouraged to leave a family, he will still have occasional contact with those family members. Again, they have very long memories, so those bonds are withstanding. Thanks very much for your question there, Senza or Senta, if I've heard that name correctly. So it is sort of the ultimate question when it comes to humans interfering with wildlife out in the wild, and we have a fairly well-structured set of ethos when it comes to assisting animals out in the wild. The general rule is, for anybody who doesn't know, we will absolutely step in and assist an animal that is injured or sick as a result of something humans have done. So, for example, an animal hit by a car, poisoned, perhaps shot by a poacher and wounded, trapped in wire, something like that, by all means. Doesn't matter what the species is, an impala, an elephant, a bird, we will absolutely try and step in and help. But under most normal circumstances, if we do come across an animal out there that has a broken leg, or perhaps a big wound as a result of fighting or hunting for its food or something like that, our practice is hands off. Let nature take its course. That rule is bent slightly if the species is highly endangered, something like a cheetah or a wild dog, perhaps another apex predator. we will possibly be able to intervene. But, yeah, some people find that very difficult to understand. I think we should be intervening all the time. I'm very much of the opinion that it's being done the right. There are occasions, of course, where I personally have bent that rule a little bit. Again, we had a pretty nasty drought cycle in 2016, 2017. Lots of animals over the place suffering. At one of the reserves I guided permanently at, or full-time at, we had a very regular occurrence of impala being trapped in the mud at a waterhole. So these very dry, very thirsty impala were coming down for a drink and sinking in mud 3 or 4 foot deep, and then gradually just kind of expiring there in the elements. On one such game drive, we came across a scene just like that, with an impala ewe stuck in the mud. But thankfully, it was with a set of very nice return guests that I had guided 4 or 5 times already. Now, management had told us we weren't allowed to assist any of these battling impala, but I chatted to these guests, said, how do you feel about this? Would you mind maybe not not telling anybody about it? And myself and my tracker kind of waded into this mud and helped 2 impala ewes out of there. So yeah, I guess if we are in a position to help, sometimes it's nice to. But it's got to be a balance. Where do we draw the line? We could take it to the full opposite extreme, and you could be trying to stop wild dogs from hunting impala or chase lions away from the buffalo, and then the wheels sort of all fall off completely. Again, our role in this environment is as custodians. We're here to kind of oversee and to conserve the greater functioning of the ecosystem, but we shouldn't really be changing the day-to-day. It's tough though, if you've got any empathy for an animal that is suffering, as millions of us as animal lovers do. It can be very good to turn a blind eye to suffering. I had a sighting maybe 8 or 9 years ago, about 5 or 6 kilometers, a massive breeding herd of buffalo. We came around the corner. It was actually here on Balloon, funnily enough, from west. We came across a tiny newborn buffalo calf just standing in the road. So obviously been separated from the group and was now just wandering around pretty hopelessly. And in a case like that, obviously all of our instinct can pick this baby up and try and help it, but you can't. If we now take that in the vehicle all the way back to the herd and try and release it, there's a good chance somebody could get quite badly hurt by one of the adult buffalo in the herd. And if you were to take that young calf into a captive circumstance, that creates a whole other set of problems. It may be successfully raised at a rehabilitation center or a sanctuary or something like that, but you will create a lifetime of problems for that animal. It'll never be able to integrate properly with other animals of its own kind. It's certainly not going to the wild. Its own lack of fear for people. And yeah, that's just going to create issues. So yeah, it's heartbreaking, isn't it, to just leave that calf. I'm not sure how that story ended exactly, but almost certainly it got eaten by hyena, leopard, lions, something like that. Now, it's tough, but it's nature. Talking of animal sanctuaries, though, and speaking specifically about what we've got in front of us, these ellies here, and if you haven't seen it already, it really is worth taking a look at. Have a look at the David Sheldrick Elephant Orphanage, which is just outside the city of Nairobi in Kenya. They specialize in taking orphaned elephants, and in large numbers. Kenya has huge problems with elephant poaching at the moment, and the byproduct of that pandemic being a whole generation of tiny, very vulnerable elephant calves that are left behind. And the experts at this Sheldrick Wildlife Trust have cracked the process to rehabilitate these little elephant calves, which are very often totally traumatized. Being highly intelligent, like ourselves, and with good memories, they remember vividly all of the horrors that they've seen, watching the adult members of their families destroyed for those tusks. And yeah, these Sheldrick Trust elephant caretakers raise these elephants, integrate them into little groups of other orphans, almost an artificial herd structure, and then they have various properties across Kenya where these elephants can be moved to for the different stages. And ultimately, with enormous success, they've released hundreds of these elephant calves back into the wild. And that is, though, quite an exception to the rule. But yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. It is incredible, incredible stuff. Sort of fixing the lost generations. A nice demonstration of very relaxed elephant body language there, that cow on the right even crossing her back feet, taking a load off. Cheeky boy, I have no doubt that elephants do sustain snake bites occasionally. It certainly happens to quite a few thousand people in the world each year, possibly a couple of 100,000 snake bites, mostly between Africa and India. So yeah, it stands to reason vulnerable. I would think it's less likely to happen to a very large elephant. Again, their skin, especially around the feet, is quite thick. But a youngish elephant calf, especially with something like a puff adder, would be very vulnerable to a bite. Certainly, I worked with a male lion in the western sector of the Sabi Sands, an adult pride male, who was seen in a sighting stepping on a puff adder and sustaining a direct bite, which completely atrophied his, I think it was his front right foot, and he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Miraculous that he survived at all. But, yeah, the body of a predator and the body of a human arguably metabolize the toxins in snake venom a little bit differently. Still very, very interesting. Thankfully, while we do have a number of venomous snake species in the wild out here, bites are pretty rare. Even though those snakes don't have ears, they tend to sense via their body, and in particular with their lower jaw. So under most normal circumstances, that snake knows about you long before you know about it, and it will start to try and move out of the way. The big issue comes in when people directly step on one, or even worse, maybe misidentify a species and are messing with it, maybe trying to catch it. And your best bet, if you do live in a place where venomous snakes occur, if you do spot one in your home, or perhaps your garden, and you're not comfortable having it around, is to contact a qualified snake catcher or a snake removal expert. Guaranteed there will be one in your area. Give them a call, give them a nice donation for their fuel, and let them catch that snake and take it somewhere else, somewhere safer. Snakes have a definite purpose in the ecosystem. They have just as much right to be there as anything else, and a vital function is provided by snakes in regulating things like the rodent population. So we need them. And they are one of the most vilified kind of groups of animals out there. I think it's pretty primal for us as primates to be scared of snakes, but we're better than that. We have intelligence to understand their function, understand the risks of having them around, and how to treat them with the respect that they deserve. Alrighty, our Ellies have moved off. Oh, perhaps not yet. Maybe the splashing before they go. That cow having a very good sniff across the surface there before she starts splashing. An elephant's sense of smell is many hundreds of times stronger than the finest sniffing dogs. So knows what she picked up on there. Possibly the scent of another elephant and some sort of coded information, some sort of a message there. Now, we as humans obviously have a sense of smell, but I think the abilities that we've got are very, very superficial. Smell in the animal kingdom is another language. All manner of information can be conveyed through scent. Hormones for breeding, threat displays, the ownership of territory, all sorts of things. Peace around the waterhole, not a whole lot going on now that our Ellies have vacated. But it's all good, we got more than our fair share of good views and good action there. So we are in the process of trying to transition to one of our other feeds here in the Olifants West Game Reserve with that camera. But always worthwhile to have a bit of a scan around. You never know what out just behind that elephant herd. Again, I mentioned in an earlier segment before we went live, Tadiwa, one of the directors, had I think a fairly brief sighting of a pack of African wild dogs in this area. So they are around. And here we've got a purple pod terminalia tree. It's quite a distinctive one, obviously, for the vivid seed pods which are on the limbs at the moment. But it's also known as the smelly foot tree, because its flowers produce a fairly revolting scent, like smelly gym shoes. Quite interestingly, its purpose is to attract flies instead of butterflies, as the chief pollinator of that species. Isn't nature phenomenal? Certainly something moving around there. Looked like a fish swirl rather than a terrapin. I would say there's a very good chance it's a large catfish. And we have a sharp-toothed catfish species here which can grow to maybe 20 or 30 kgs in size, 50, 60 pounds, something like that. Well over 3 or 4 foot long. They get enormous. And they can live in fairly stagnant standing water, which is quite impressive. Alrighty, we've been unsuccessful in raising the other waterhole here on Olifants West, so I think we're going to head back up to Tau in Madikwe now to see what's happening there. Superb, one of my favorites. Big male cruising around in the midday heat, doing a bit of fishing. Undoubtedly, in parallel to that yellow-billed stork. And there's another crocodile further back. So very often schools of small tilapia and catfish, eager to get out of the way of the jaws of that crocodile, will go jumping and flapping right into the bills of water birds. Birds like the yellow-billed stork. And conversely, occasionally the stork will drive fish towards the crocodile. So they kind of operate as two halves of a pincer movement. But that alliance is perhaps a bit of a risky one, especially for the bird. Because if unsuccessful on the hunt for fish, birds are very much on the menu for a Nile crocodile. See how that crocodile is just moving very, very slowly through those shallows. He's going to sense a fish resting in that cloudy water before the fish moves. Again, up to 70% of what a crocodile is feeding on is made up by fish. But the final 30% is basically whatever it can get between those jaws. And that could be anything from a Cape buffalo to a tiny scrub hare bird, a fish, or rather a tortoise, a terrapin. They are highly opportunistic. And unfortunately for us, humans feature on that menu as well. Crocodilians are thought to be one of the very, very, very few wild animal families that see humans naturally as a food source. Whoa, snap. See if he got something there. He may have grabbed a fish. Perhaps not. Yeah, it's thought that as many as a couple of thousand people in Africa are killed by Nile crocodiles every single year. Unfortunately, in very rural areas, a lot of quite poverty-stricken people do not have access to plumbing in their homes, to flushing toilets, to water to bathe in, water to drink. So unfortunately, many of those people are forced down to the edge of a lake or a river at some stage during the day or the evening, and that is where they come into contact with hippos and crocodiles, which are the two biggest killers of all of Africa's animals, of humans. Zane has said that was one very brave bird near the croc. Zane, for sure. So much of life is a gamble. You've got to know when to when to hold them and when to fold them. And the bird is doing a pretty good job for the moment of managing that risk. Hello, Joan. Time for lunch for the crocodile, she says. Absolutely. So again, this crocodile is probably not eating every single day. If he has a good feed, he can go a pretty extraordinary length of time between meals. This is also a particularly well-fed looking individual. Very plump tail, nice fat content down his spine, on his sides. This is a successful crocodile. But a tasty fish he probably wouldn't turn down. The little bird moving around just in the grass on the left there is a black crake, another nice water bird. Perfect habitat for it to live in. Lots of nice nesting spaces. Oh, there's another one. And without doubt, a breeding pair. So yeah, perfect place to raise a family of chicks. And I'm sure there are lots of tasty insects to eat. Incredible that such a large crocodile, and this guy is probably about 3 meters long, just vanishes in this shallow water. Probably not more than a foot deep, but that's all he needs. The ultimate ambush hunter, without doubt. Things are certainly hotting up here at Tau Lodge in Madikwe. Well in excess of 30 degrees centigrade. It's now 2:30 in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day. Very good news if you're a reptile. A lot of solar energy available there. But yeah, by the looks of it, not much else going on. Quite a few birds around though. A couple of cattle egrets Those may be spoonbills with their heads kind of tucked away right in the center there. A blacksmith lapwing, a black-winged stilt way up at the back. If you're at all interested in birds and doing a bit of birding, going down in a marsh or a wetland area is always a good idea. Joan, they do look like logs. Speaking about those crocodiles. And again, if they are difficult to spot for you or I, we've got very, very good vision in general. We've got a sense of imagination which gives us the ability to only see a single crocodile eye or maybe a tooth protruding out of the mud, and our brain can put the entire puzzle together. We have the ability to just see a piece and know that there's an entire crocodile there. But look at it through the perspective of something like an impala or a zebra. They usually don't see in color. They don't have an imagination. So that crocodile is basically invisible. And it relies on those facts to regularly catch things like antelope. Prayer to your comment. Happy you're enjoying it. Yeah, that was an awesome sighting of that crocodile. Maybe he'll pop up again. There are, of course, also others in this muddy pan. I think there's at least 3, possibly more. A yellow-billed stork doing a bit of fishing there. You'll see how he kind of cracks open his bill and then swings his head side to side, sort of trawling through this water. Should a little fish bump up onto his beak, he will snap it shut. These yellow-billed storks are also a serious predator of newly hatched crocodiles. Crocs essentially come out of their nests a little under a foot long, so they're tiny, tiny. There's a crocodile moving just behind the stork. Terry says, hunting with so much pain. Yeah, absolutely, Terry. Crocs are, without a doubt, some of the most patient hunters out there. Able to sit completely submerged in water for up to 90 minutes, possibly more if it's a bit colder. No breathing, no movement, just waiting for something to take a step a little bit too close. That very dark bird just on the little island there, I think is actually a black eagle. It's quite a nice thing to see. That is the bird made famous for that funny display of its wings when it's fishing. It brings the wings forward to cross in front of its head, almost like a shaded umbrella. For any British viewers, it's the nighttime, daytime bird. Yeah, not one we see all too regularly at all, so that's a lovely sighting. Nice variety here at Tower. So Mikey has asked, will this move this habitat from this waterhole, or is this their only habitat? Mikey, thanks very much for your question. A very astute question it is. Crocodiles have the ability, or a large crocodile, of walking up to 100 kilometers. and that's at least what has been recorded anyway, between waterholes when conditions are unfavorable. So should this waterhole for whatever reason dry up, a pretty remarkable ability to travel formidable distances to find a new home. I put a tracker working with me in the Sabi Sands down on some leopard tracks, which he followed for a number of kilometers through the bush. Dropping down into a dry riverbed, he walked around a corner. Tells me he stepped onto the tail of something like a 4.5 meter crocodile, which roared like a lion, so he nearly jumped out of his shoes and sort of snapped in his direction. So ultimately that was a crocodile that was on a mission to find a new place to live, having had its waterhole home dry up, and he entered the bush. So they do. We've got to be very careful in African dams and rivers, because you may come to a lovely pond or a clear pool in a river one day and have a lovely swim, have a nice relax there. We've clearly established that there's no crocodile in it, but come back tomorrow and there could quite logically be one in there. So if we do take a swim out in the bush, and we don't often, it's always advisable to check a waterhole thoroughly before you take a plunge. Keeping in mind once again, a 6 meter, 1 ton Nile crocodile could hide in as little as 1.5 foot of water. Yeah, frightening stuff indeed. There is so much life around at the moment. I'm just looking at the butterflies moving around and thinking about them as well. There's that croc again, coming in from the left. Yeah, it's the beauty of spending time out in the wild, in particular during the summer in Africa. It's certainly not for sissies. Daytime temperatures in some areas can get up to in excess of 40 degrees Celsius. There is certainly a lot of bugs. It's quite likely to rain. So when it comes to planning safaris, very often people prefer to come in the drier months. It's also defined as better in because the bush dies back and you can see further in. But for me personally, summertime is the time to be out here. I live for the wet season. And Andrea hitting the nail right on the head. She has said, lovely to see this variety of animals all living in harmony. Definitely, Andrea. It is a remarkable interconnected system. One hand washing the other in many cases. And yeah, it is the variety that attracts me to the wet season. I have always loved stuff, the insects, the reptiles. That's the stuff that gives a safari real meat, real substance. But of course, there is also lots of importance on the big high-profile stuff. You'll never say no to a nice lion or a leopard as well. That looks like a crocodile out on land at the back there. Tough to spot in that green grass, but he's there. And certainly those big white birds, as predicted, are a pair of African spoonbills. They're so named because of that very peculiar sort of salad spoon-shaped beak. A beak they will use quite skillfully to pull little mollusks, tiny clams, that sort of thing, up out of the mud. and a black stilt up at the top there amongst those lilies feeding away. See how good your eyes are. Can you see a crocodile in that green grass? So he's just kind of down and a bit right of that stilt, the white bird. Red-knobbed coot is the quite chunky looking bird crossing over there. Nice to see them. We don't see those very often at all in the Lowveld. At Djuma, at Pridelands, spots like that. Life for the few fish that do exist in this particular pan is getting very, very challenging at this time of the year. And rain hasn't been great in much of South Africa's northwest, where Madikwe is located this season. So yeah, the fish are battling, and these birds are certainly capitalizing on the fish trapped in these rapidly shrinking pools. Spoonbills having a bit of a domestic dispute there, a bit of squabbling. Very large herd of blue wildebeest in the back there, way out in the open, and having a bit of a midday snooze. It's a bit of a trade-off for those wildebeest. Obviously it would be lovely to hunker down in the shade somewhere, but the way their eyes have evolved, they're far more efficient at spotting something like a pride of lions coming their way out in the open than they are when there is sort of woodland around them. So they do prefer life in the open. There's a crocodile coming out of the water further back there. You can see his very yellowish skin just at the edge of that water. And up he comes. Whoa! Looks like he was being chased by the other crocodile behind him. Unfortunately, there is a bit of a delay on this camera. It doesn't react to the director's inputs straight away. Yeah, perhaps a little bit of a squabble over prime hunting grounds there between two different crocs. The larger of the two was certainly keen to chase this guy out. Crocodiles can be pretty territorial, especially if there is any breeding going on. Big males will take kind of control of a section of river or a section of a large lake, and they will physically defend that from other males. They get into vicious battles, occasionally biting off each other's entire legs, tails, one another's jaws. It can be tough going. Thankfully, though, they're pretty gnarly reptiles, pretty tough. Elegy, yellowish skin, a jaundiced croc. Elegy, perhaps in a human, certainly, but not for a crocodile at all. This guy is perfectly happy and healthy. We actually refer to their skin as sensitive, so sensitive to light. It also reacts to, whoa, check that other croc out. Sat there with his mouth a bit agape. That is without a doubt a threat directed at the one up on land. So yeah, the hotter a crocodile is, the lighter its skin will go when its batteries are fully charged, as with the one that we've just witnessed being chased up onto land. He's full of energy. Very, very warm, so his skin is quite yellow. A croc that is very cold, quite low on energy, will turn very, very dark, almost black. And that has benefit improving the amount of light and heat the crocodile's body actually attracts. Black obviously absorbing light and heat. Lighter colors like white, green, yellow actually reflecting more heat. Pretty phenomenal stuff. Getting lots of nice comments there. Yeah, that was certainly a bit of unexpected action. And once again, I think that gape, that opening of the jaws, a direct threat. Sending a very clear message to that smaller croc. This particular pool, at least for the moment, is mine. So John has asked a very, very good question. Why do crocodiles sit there with their mouth open like that? So initially I think, John, that gape was probably intended to intimidate the other crocodile up on the bank. But right now, this crocodile is trying to release a little bit of excess heat. So all of the flesh around kind of the tongue, and they've got a flap at the back of the throat called the gullar flap. There's a vast network of blood vessels, a bit like an elephant's ears. So when a crocodile's body temperature is getting a little bit too high, and the croc will actually gape, exposing all of that very fleshy, very bare skin, very well circulated skin to the air, and that helps to radiate heat to bring his temperature down. Of course, if it gets way too much, if that's not working, the croc can always submerge in the water and cool down that way. A very good question. Hit it right on the head. Thanks, John. Don't know where that other croc went. Possibly moved around. There's an Ellie. Yeah, there he is, by the stump just behind the elephant. Very, very nice. A one-tusked wonder. This midday period is, I think, for many safari guides and people out working in these environments, kind of thought of as the graveyard shift. because of the heat. It's often estimated that animal activity will go down. And certainly for things like lions and leopards, that's probably over the whole quite true. But as we know from this Live at the Waterhole show, you can see an awful lot through these hottest hours. Tracy has asked, do elephants ever get their trunks bitten by croc? Absolutely do, Tracy. So often dangling that trunk in the water. I think a crocodile will sense that movement, in particular if it's very close by. And in some cases doesn't realize that the trunk is attached to a 6 or 7 ton elephant, and the croc will snap onto it. Sometimes with disastrous results. If the elephant is a very small craft, it's possible that that croc could pull it in and drown it and make a meal of it. But in a very big elephant, it's probably just going to bruise the trunk a little bit. The elephant might even step on the crocodile or impale it with its tusks. I've seen some pretty phenomenal footage. I take it it doesn't tell the whole story. It's of a huge elephant cow repeatedly goring a big Nile crocodile. The croc is very clearly quite dead in the footage. So I wonder if that croc tried to bite her trunk and she absolutely crushed it. Very nice. Little Ellie calves having a wrestling match there. At that size, these little elephant calves are getting 95% of the moisture they need to survive from their mom's milk, which is basically all they're taking. But any opportunity to have a bit of a wrestle in the mud, they absolutely will. Such fun. And thanks very much for your comment again there, Mikey. I'm always very happy to talk crocodiles. Again, they're one of those species that is super vilified. And I think just based on kind of the way they look, they're a bit scaly, they're a bit scary looking, and the fact that they do kill to kind of make their makes people sort of feel negatively towards them. But I think that's a bit sad and a bit superficial. There's a lot more than meets the eye. It was a very quick visit to the waterhole for these eddies. They seem to have wallowed and they're heading off. You can see occasional dust devils forming there, those sort of gusty, almost mini dust tornadoes in the open area. It's a testament to what the conditions here at Tau are actually like at the moment. I mentioned yesterday rainfall across much of this west section of southern Africa has been really disappointing this year. Still, the season is not over yet. We've had kind of the biggest rainfall in the season arrive in March before. So hopefully there is a bit more rain out there. But we are fast approaching the dry season. So if it doesn't come, it's going to mean a very harsh dry season for much of southern Africa. Yeah, it seems to be fairly impossible to predict what's going to happen long term into the future. But it does seem to be somewhat cyclical. We go through a couple of very extreme dry years and then a couple of extreme wet years with flooding. and that is El Nino and La Nina in a nutshell. Some red-billed teals down there by the look of it. Not a waterbird species that we see a whole lot of. So that's a nice one. Yeah, this waterhole here at Tau isn't entirely natural. It is pumped artificially, as with many of the waterholes on our feeds. Yeah, it's sort of a spin-off. I mean, we were chatting earlier about human intervention in cases where animals are suffering or injured or anything like that. So surely the provision of water would be against our ethos. And certainly, if we want to look at these areas entirely holistically, we shouldn't be providing water. But as we know, water is life, and water encourages an intensity of sightings. Certainly, with safari tourism operating in these areas, you need waterholes in order to kind of encourage a density of animal populations. We have also, of course, fed most of these reserves entirely, so animal movements are restricted. So I guess to some degree we do have a responsibility to provide water. Alrighty, I think we might leave Tau in peace for a little bit now. Let's head back over to Olifantswest in South Limpopo province to have a look at Narrated Dam. It is an elephant afternoon here at Live at the Waterhole. Another bull by the looks of things. I'm still hanging on to hope that on one of these shows, Ezelwini, the phenomenal tusker, will pop up here. I believe he is in the vicinity somewhere. And we could quite realistically expect him to be in one of these bachelor herds. Leading one of these bachelor herds, should I rather say. I was lucky enough to spend, I think, 2 or 3 drives with him, presenting for WildEarth at Pridelands a couple of months back. Certainly some of the happiest sightings for me out in the bush are or have been spent with him. An amazing individual with a commanding presence. Obviously a very strong pump. That well has filled itself up quickly since the last herd emptied it. Essential. Stephanie has actually just sent exactly the same comment. Minds think alike, Stephanie. So unfortunately, we've only got about 2 minutes before the close of Live at the Waterhole for this afternoon. But what a pleasure it has been to do the last couple of Waterhole shows for you. And we will be coming back live, of course, again tomorrow, same time. Not with myself, but with another one of our WildEarth naturalists. And I'll be back with you in mid-April, I think, on the 13th. I'm looking forward to it. But from our greater team of Zoomies and WildEarth directors, we've had Tadiwa and Chulu managing all of the stuff behind the scenes today, as well as myself, Liam Burrow, chatting you through a bit of wildlife. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you are out there celebrating Easter this weekend, have a very happy and safe weekend. But from all of us, I guess for now, it is goodbye. Goodbye and thanks again. And hope to chat to you again sometime soon.
Well, a very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you once again for joining us on our highlight show. Yes, my name is Cedric, and behind the camera with me here at the tent, we've got BK. So thanks for joining us, and we're coming directly from Djuma Private Game Reserve in the northern Sabi Sands. Well, in the next 30 minutes, we are just going to be discussing some highlights that we've been seeing over the last 24 hours. And, was there some great sightings over the last 24 hours. It has been fantastic. I've been on the edge of my seat on Rusty once or twice. It has been a wonderful, wonderful day. But, as you know, this is on safari. Well, as you know, this is a live and interactive show, so if you want to pretty much send any comments or questions or suggestions for our plans for this afternoon, and if you are watching on the WildEarth website, make sure that you do register so you can send those things through to us, or just go onto the hashtag WildEarth on Twitter, or also known as X, or go onto the YouTube channel if you want to just have a good old discussion all surrounding about wildlife and our highlights. But if it's your first time joining us on this show, it's all about what we've been seeing from the sunset safari yesterday afternoon and the sunrise safari this morning, as well as Steve is busy getting ready outside there. We're on Wendy, and he will be discussing his plans for this afternoon, and as well we will discuss our plans on what we're going to be doing and where we are going to go. But there's a lot to do, I think. I think this afternoon is packed with plans. Packed. But anyway, I think let's go take a look at our first highlight reel, and that was from yesterday afternoon. And it was quite a surprise when we came around the corner to a dam that's on the northeastern corner of Djuma, and bada bang, bada boom, guess who we got there. Take a look. Oh, leopard. There's a leopard, there's a leopard. Oh! I don't even know. Oh, yeah, it is him. Yeah, it is. It's Mulwati. It's Mulwati. Ah, Mulwati. I've got more whitey here. I'm just hanging around Buffelshoek Dam. He's sniffing something. You can see he's lifting his nose. Oh, I'm just going to go a bit forward. Sorry, Paul. Yeah. He's going up there, but he's looking at something there. Oh. Alright, we've got more white here now, just coming to one of the inflows. It's a little bit, sorry. Let's go a little bit here. That was the only time we're going to get him. There he comes, one path gone. He's going to the other one. And there he goes again. Beautiful male leopard, eh? He's still, and he might come in front of us. I might just duck my head here. Oh, there. Sorry, Paul. Paul's last day and he's doing a fantastic job here. My boy. Oh. Always pretty, eh? Always pretty. At least we got him going up the road there now. Oh, and that's with a green leaf in the way. So yeah, this is one of our dominant males of this area of Juma Mulwati. Not the easiest male to view. He's one of the guys that always trying to, remain out of sight from us. So for us to get him on screen, sometimes it's so tricky and tough. But yeah, at least we got him. All right. Well, that was. Yeah, no, I sounded a little bit disappointed when I realized it was Mulwati. But look, it is always nice to see that male leopard. I mean, I love him. He's just doing what a leopard does. I mean, a leopard is a really elusive, secretive cat, and he's just one of those ones that he will always try and avoid the vehicles. As well as, same as you used to have a male leopard called Jordan. And Jordan used to be the same situation. Jordan used to always, as soon as you came into a sighting here, and he was pretty much here from like 2006 to 7 to 8 to 9, 2010, around about there. And when he came into the sighting with that male leopard, he did exactly like Mulwati. He would just disappear. He would lie down, or he would go behind 2-3 bushes, and then he would just he would vanish. And so yeah, I think Mulwati reminds me a lot of him. But it's alright, it was always good, nice to have him. A fantastic job by Muscles and Paw to kind of keep up with him. I'll really take my hat off for the cam ops because it was so tricky. We had only certain little windows where he was walking, and then Paul had to readjust the camera again and try and get another view and readjust again. I had to move the vehicle, and at one stage I was in tears because I was seeing Paul. The whole camera with the tripod was like kind of on the side there, and then he was trying to get it back again, and it was. But that's just part. right, we're back with us. We do apologize. I think we just our signal in this area just had a little bit of a dip and all that. But anyway, let's head over to the second clip and go and take a look exactly what Steve had yesterday afternoon. I think he had one of his favorite animals.
Hello, you cheeky thing. I could tell you were cheeky the moment I saw you. Yeah, you, so cheeky. Go on. Ah. Did you just kick that stick out of the way? Go on, show us how big you are. Oh, wow. You are so fierce. You are so big and strong, you are. Eh? You're a cheeky boy. Yes, you are. Oh, weird. Oh, he's going to pick up his stick again. Are you going to eat that, or are you just going to toss it around? Didn't your mum tell you not to play with your food? Oh, that's it. You just trampled that branch. That branch didn't know what hit it.